Hey garden nerds, let's talk about growing tomatoes in small spaces. I'm Christy Wilhelmi from Gardenerd, and I've been growing tomatoes in tiny spots for more than 30 years. Today, I'm going to share all my tricks and tips with you. Let's start with the setup right behind me. Right here, I've got a cage that is made out of what I call mix mat, or it's the underlayment on when you put down concrete for driveways. This is the stuff that goes under it. And I have instructions for how to make this in my book, High Yield Small Space Organic Gardening. This is holding 8 tomatoes behind me, 4 on this side and 4 on the other side. We've planted these tomatoes 1 foot apart, and they grow up through a grid of string that we layer, 1 layer at a time, week by week, until the tomatoes reach the top of the cage, and then we let them spill over. Here at Gardenerd, we prefer the tomato crib method because it means we don't have to work as hard to wrangle the tomatoes. They just sort of grow and fill the space, and we don't have to work that hard. Now I know what you're thinking. Tomatoes have to be spaced at least 2 feet apart, probably more. And yeah, you can, and you can do that. And if you live in a place where there's high humidity or you get summer rains, that's a really good idea. But you can also grow them 1 foot apart and just prune them so that they grow straight up and not all over the place. And then I have 8 different varieties of tomatoes growing here, so you can get a lot of different varieties in the same space. So this is 8 square feet, 8 tomatoes. Let me show you another setup where things are spaced a little further apart, but still pretty compact. This is another setup that I have in my Vigo garden. These are tomatoes connected to these ladders that are about 2 feet apart, maybe a little bit less. They're about 18 inches apart. And these guys, since they have a little bit more room, I'm not pruning off all of the side branches as much as I should be, but they are, you can see, getting a little out of hand, and I'm gonna have to wrangle them into place a little bit better. So removing these lower branches here is going to help with productivity and organization. I will put a link to a version of these ladders down in the description below if you want to get some of these for yourself. You'll also find a link to Vigo Gardens in the description below. These tomatoes are going gangbusters because they're in brand new soil and these new beds, so check that out. This bed is 2.5 feet wide and 8 feet long. I have 6 tomatoes in here with stuff, non-tomato things planted on either side. I have them on a diagonal, so they are opposite one another in a hexagonal spacing setup. I mentioned that it's important to prune tomatoes so that they grow straight up. It starts at the nursery or when you're seeding your own tomatoes. You want to make sure you're planting single stem tomatoes and not those that are branching off to 2 sides. You want to thin the lower branches so they don't touch the soil down here at the bottom, and you want to cut off the side branches that stick outside the cage. So you're going to grow up instead of out. The other thing we do is when we plant these tomatoes, we put a little extra fertilizer and a little bit of Epsom salts for blossom end rot prevention. It's not about salt, it's a calcium uptake issue, and magnesium paired with calcium facilitates better uptake. So there's that. We also recommend pruning the suckers off, except if you get a lot of blight where you live. If you have blight in your soil, you're going to need that extra foliage later in the season as the blight takes over the plants. Around here, we don't start to see signs of blight until those tomatoes are almost starting to ripen. So there's no way I'm pulling out plants to remove blight from this garden. It's just a fact of life. We live in a coastal area and we get marine layer, and blight travels on all of that. So if that is your situation, don't prune all of the suckers off. Just mindfully prune to keep the tomatoes growing straight up and not overtaking the cage, and then those suckers will produce later for you when you've had to remove leaves that have blight. And of course, everything I'm sharing with you today translates to containers. If you are growing tomatoes in containers, restrict yourself to 1 per pot, and you want your pot to be at least 15 inches in diameter and tall. Remember, in containers, roots can't dive down to mine minerals in deep soils, so we have to give it everything it needs. And if you're growing in ground or in raised beds like this, you still may have to feed your plants a little more often because they're sharing root space a lot closer together. Give this technique a try and see if you can't get more tomatoes and more varieties out of your garden this season. For more information about growing in small spaces, check out my book, High Yield Small Space Organic Gardening, and my other books and my online courses, which help you plan for your best, most efficient, high-yielding garden yet, and pest control, which everyone needs help with. Check out everything at gardenerd.com and consider becoming a Patreon subscriber to support all the free stuff we do here at Gardenerd. Patreon supporters get access to behind-the-scenes goodies like monthly hangouts with me and expedited answers to your burning gardening questions. Happy gardening.